back to another episode of the Triple Option Podcast. I'm your co-host Trun Raghu, along with Abhi Dingari, and our other co-host Nate Autry will join us later. He has some other things to take care of. That's absolutely fine. But we have quite a bit to talk about in the world of college football today. Starting off with coaching.
So it seems like
I guess.
Florida has found their new coach today.
Oh yeah, Billy Napier. There's been a lot of hype around Billy Napier. Obviously, having quite a bit of success at Louisiana, fairly solid record. Solid record, other than a somewhat ugly Texas loss this year, the team has been pretty solid. They're ranked in the top 25. The only real questions Florida would have around the tires is recruiting ability, especially being in a state like Louisiana where there's very few schools to compete with for those three and low four-star players. But other than that, I think this is a solid hire. I think Florida was wise in realizing they're not going to be able to pay large sums of money for coaches like some other schools I'll get to later. They're strategic with it. They kind of acknowledge that this is going to take multiple years.
Yeah. I like the direction. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I also like the direction. I think Dan Mullen, while he's a genius offensive mind, I think they needed someone who has more of a hard hat mindset, who's willing to enforce somewhat of a culture. And I think Billy Napier can be that guy.
Yeah, I do see that. I think Napier will lead this Florida program back into the right direction, whether that be through that grit that he presents or just that window of time that he's given them to rebuild and regrow as a program. Moving
Yeah.
on to what arguably set the college football world on fire. Lincoln Riley to join the University of Southern California and become a Trojan. Man, that's
This
crazy.
is weird because evaluating from a hiring position, evaluating from a coaching decision at first, Avi, I was saying this well before, this was a popular narrative, especially amongst Oklahoma fans. I remember I was telling you ahead of time, I don't think Lincoln Riley's an amazing coach. He hasn't proven he can rebuild a program, and I believe, and I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I think
Honestly,
USC. You say what you were gonna say?
I do see what you were talking about. I've seen from the tenure that Lincoln Riley has with Oklahoma, if anything, he's taken the quarterbacks that we've got started with Baker Mayfield and elevated them to the highest levels of success. We saw that with Baker, we saw that with Kyler, we saw that with Jalen Hurts, we saw that for a season of Spencer Rattler. All different, very type of QBs, but I think the only reason we could really say Lincoln Riley would really want to go to USC with just the money, but also he's in California, he's in LA. There's a massive market of recruits there. Like,
Yeah, but
really,
I'm
that's it.
also yeah, but the thing about Lincoln Riley, if you look at his quarterbacks while he's at OU, so his first year transfers, right? So I
Hmm.
don't think he improved Kyler and Baker much from a physical standpoint. It was mostly a mental game thing, which obviously is important. I will give him credit for Jalen Hurts, though. I don't think Jalen Hurts is even touching an NFL field if it isn't for Lincoln Riley. Spencer
Yeah,
Rattler, I don't think it was much of a success. He failed to develop mentally because Spencer Rattler has all the physical gifts. There's not much more to develop there.
I feel
You just have to have.
Riley
You just have to
is.
get.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. Rattler's mental game is kind of suspect, but I feel like Riley's best quality when it comes to quarterbacks is making a system that makes them look like the absolute incarnation of God. Just make him look like an amazing QB. But obviously it didn't work out with Rattler and that transition to Caleb Williams. But I feel like he might have success there at USC. But the problem is, who does he keep at quarterback? Because we've seen recently, even without Riley, they were struggling between Kedon Slovis and the new freshman. I forgot his name. What was it like? What was it like? It was like something.
Jackson
What was?
Dart.
Yeah, Dart, right? And now with obviously new recruiting and just the presence of Lincoln Riley, I'm thinking that there's going to be a massive change in USC. And he's just gonna he might overhaul it with recruits and just build it. He might try to build it up from the ground, especially with the quarterback position.
Well, also like the thing about I think a lot of people are crediting USC with a good hire. Obviously, like Lincoln Riley is a great coach or has had coaching success. Not sure if he's necessarily an amazing coach yet, based on my previous point, where like he hasn't really had to rebuild a program like Saban has had to or Carroll has had to. But like I don't think his culture fits USC. If you think about how Lincoln Riley ran Oklahoma, like he never allowed Caleb Williams to have any press conferences. Isn't a very pro NIL coach. He isn't very pro transfer portal and at least letting players leave. Obviously, that last one might change a bit, rebuilding a program in his own right. But like,
Mm,
I don't see how his view on how college football should be fits USC, which is
it's kind of a
one
crazy
of the few
place.
schools, along with schools like Texas, is very much like economically
Just
speaking a pro team.
yeah, I can see that. I mean, yeah,
But he has been
The Riley hire was good, in my opinion. Just like the concerns you do bring up are pretty prevalent. Like, it's very clear that might be a problem moving forward.
yeah,
However,
but he
what
is
might
bringing his guys though. He's bringing his receiver coach from Oklahoma. He's bringing his director of personnel. He's bringing over Alex Grinch.
is also bringing in two of our 5 stars.
Yeah.
Malachi Nelson decommitted the day he after Riley left us, and now it looks like he might be heading to USC along with another one of our 5 stars. It's kind of crazy that most of our 5 stars that we try to recruit all either went to Mater Dei or Los Alamitos. They're just all from that same Los Angeles area, and they all now are going to go decommit and join Riley at USC. That just kind of crazy to me. That's
Also,
happening.
like, here's a question to ponder: did Lincoln Riley leave for USC because Oklahoma was 10-2, or was Oklahoma 10-2 because Lincoln Riley was going to leave for USC?
I know I'm trying to get ahead of myself, but if you watch that second half of the Oklahoma OK State game, I felt like he knew he was going to USC already, so he kind
Also,
of
like,
just
he
didn't
apparently
care.
took business here. He apparently was like took days off during the Baylor week.
It's kind of weird considering that's one of the
And they
biggest
lost
games.
2 of their last 3 games.
Hmm. Yeah, it just all the details and it's kind of suspicious about Lincoln Riley's departure. But like a
They
lot
said,
of what Oklahoma is, like especially with the current moment, like not the culture, but like the identity that Oklahoma possesses is kind of changing with the departure of Riley. It might go back to an old like style as we see Stu stepping back in as interim
yeah,
coach,
yeah,
but there's always a possibility that someone else joins.
yeah. I'll just say something real quick, then I'll let Nate jump in here. Um, if you look at their schedule, like after the Texas game, which a lot of us expected to be like the momentum swing for them, they beat the crap out of TCU. They struggled a bit against Kansas, and they actually decided to try, and they beat them handily. Beat Texas Tech handily, and then the final 3 games, they lost to Baylor by 13 points, only scoring 14 on offense. They beat Iowa State, only scoring 28, and then they beat Oklahoma State. And they did score 33, but I believe they had some defensive points as well as some special teams.
I would like to say that if you look at the box score at least, Oklahoma did not score at all in the fourth quarter, while OSU or OK State
They didn't score at
scored.
all in the second half. They had two
No,
defensive scores,
oh yeah,
but
their
other than
offense
that,
did score. The offense did
their
not
offense did
score.
not score.
They scored in general, but their offense did not score at all. And the play calling was very suspect. I remember on 3rd and 8, they're literally running like hitch routes, like 5 yard hitch routes. Like that's not what you want to do to get a 3rd and 8 converted. Like that's just a terrible play call. There were a lot of this just bad play calls throughout the second half, and I really felt like maybe I don't think a coach would really like throw a game so he could leave early, especially because like recruiting starts now for a lot of these college teams. Like they can actually go visit the athletes and their families. But it doesn't help when we watch the games and there's some like really dumb decisions made by what many consider as like a very good offensive coach, especially with the quarterback position.
Nate, what's your answer to the question I posed before? Like, did Lincoln Riley leave because Oklahoma's 10-2, or is Oklahoma 10-2 because Lincoln Riley had his eyes set on USC?
I'm not sure. I think he was probably considering it going forwards, and then once they lost that game, he said it. He made up his mind. He was gone.
Mhm.
But I feel like if Oklahoma had won that game and been in playoff contention, he would have stayed at least till the end of the season. So
Yeah, but as you saw with and a real quick thing before we move on to other coaches, this is a question for Avi, or also a residential Thunder fan. Is Lincoln Riley better than, equal to, or worse than KD when he left Oklahoma City?
I mean, okay, let's think about this, right? The Riley was like actually the coach for only 4 years. He did bring us a lot of success though, but we never. It's like never like we made the natty with him, right? And you do like you said, he wasn't really like an elevator as much as he was like a maintainer of like the success we had, and like making our quarterbacks better. And the move was sudden. It was just kind of weird, but Kevin Durant like he was talking to the team, to Golden State teammates like throughout the year. He left to the team that he choked against. Like if you look at those numbers, from Game 5 to Game 7, his like 3-point shooting percentage like 30%, and dropping from like 48. Like it's clear that he just did not play anywhere close to that superstar expectation. So I would still say, even though I personally have forgiven Kevin Durant for leaving, like I think any star would leave that situation. It was just bad. But even though I have forgiven him, I would say Kevin Durant was still worse. Especially
but we
even if it.
digress.
But yeah, but I digress. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, the thing that surprised me about Lincoln Riley, though, was like he was right at the doorstep. And speaking of coaches that were like seemed to be right at the doorstep, Chip Kelly, not Chip, Brian Kelly rather.
Hmm. So it was an interesting sign by LSU.
Not only that, just like I'm surprised he left Notre Dame. Like obviously, like you have more recruiting, better recruiting at LSU, but when you're at Notre Dame, if you're 11-1 without a conference championship, they've been putting you in the playoff for years now, and it's likely going to go to 12 teams, and you're basically guaranteed a spot.
Mm, I will say this isn't new behavior for Brian Kelly. In 2009, he had the number 3 ranked Cincinnati team, and he left for Notre Dame before they even played the bowl game. So it's nothing new for him. It's been a long time. People have forgotten, but I think he doesn't really necessarily care about the pedigree. He's fine with lateral changes as long as it's something new that he can build.
Well, you could argue the Cincy and Notre Dame move, because like one could say, oh, Cincy and three and number three seed, they don't have the resources to necessarily maintain that. But you could argue, oh, Brian Kelly, if he went to Notre Dame, he would have the same resources. And so far, he's shown, other than like 1-5-7 season, he's been able to maintain like a fairly respectable level of success in Notre Dame, even able to reach national championship level status.
Yeah.
Like,
Like at the current level LSU's at, do you really think they can reach that pedigree that they were at before, like even 2 seasons ago, especially under his coach?
Under Ed Ogeron.
No, not Orgeron, under Kelly. Because like, look, if you look at the SEC at the moment, you have Georgia and Bama, and even Ole Miss, who are really building up like low key a powerhouse. But that it's becoming a lot more competitive. Plus, Oklahoma and Texas will move in. I don't know about Texas makes a difference, but I don't really get the move, honestly, especially with like a nice cushy situation at Notre Dame.
I just think that LSU is it's probably a top 3 job for recruiting because the state
That's
of
true.
Louisiana is a football powerhouse, and unlike states like Texas or Mississippi, Louisiana LSU is uncontested in Louisiana, so it gets all of the Louisiana recruits.
That
And
is actually a very valid
that's
point.
That's
And so I
true,
think,
but like
I mean, again, it doesn't necessarily make sense to us, but it's not like he's never done it before. He did it when he moved from Cincinnati to Notre Dame. I think he probably just sees it as LSU is a more quote unquote sustainable job, and he has had success in Notre Dame. But again, how many national championships has he won? None.
that that's fair, but like if you look, and you can also argue like he's gonna struggle for like at least 2 years in LSU, and it's not because it was like calling him a bad coach. It's just like the culture's gonna take a while to build. Cause like it's such a massive shift from Ed Orgeron, who's like he's very much a player's guy, right? Like a lot of players like Ed Orgeron. Brian Kelly doesn't really prioritize player relationships in the same way, right?
Yeah.
He's much of a hard nosed kind of guy who's like, I'm the coach, you gotta listen to me. And obviously, like there's there's an argument for that coaching style, but it's going to take a couple years for him to like build something at LSU, and I'm not sure LSU has the patience for that.
I mean, he would have to go on like an insane recruiting pace and bringing in some of the best recruits in the nation really quickly. But I do think it might be a good hire, maybe just because he has had some success with Notre Dame, even though they're kind of fraudulent every year. He's had good success with them. Maybe he can bring some of that taste back to LSU.
Hmm. It'll be interesting going forward for sure.
Yeah, but like I can understand that point. Like the thing is though, it's like Brian Kelly isn't like a huge like name amongst recruits like a Lincoln Riley is.
But LSU is, and he can point to the success he's had at Notre Dame, and LSU
But
that
that's
just
like an
has
independent where you can. That's just independent where you can choose how easy your schedule is all the way.
again, but that doesn't help when you're trying to go to the playoffs. I mean, one of Notre Dame's biggest problems is when they don't play in a conference championship, and have to. They don't always have the strongest schedules, but mostly the conference championship. That's a problem for them. So they go a whole week sitting and watching, and so they have to rely on other teams to get upset in order to make the playoffs. Which is the situation this year, if you look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair, I suppose.
I'm gonna be a homer real quick, and I just want to talk about Bob Stoops being the current interim coach at Oklahoma, and how much that can mean for the program. But also, it's alleged reports that Venables I'm very sure I'm butchering his name, but Brian Venables of Clemson's coming back to Oklahoma,
Brandon
which
Venables.
Brian Venables, yeah, I think I might have messed that up, but he allegedly has reports to come back to Oklahoma and bring some of the Clemson guys with him. I don't know how like credible that report may be, but there's a lot of evidence building up that that might be the case. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought about.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, it's interesting because again, he is the highest paid coordinator coach in, I guess assistant coach is what you call it in America. So at Clemson, and he's had success there. I guess he just sees the writings on the wall after this year. So I could see him moving to Oklahoma to try and get success. I'm not sure how many players he would bring, especially because a lot of the players rumored to bring were offensive players like DJ and
Not
others.
necessarily. His son plays on the defense, and his son's a fairly talented player in his own right.
Mhm.
So that could
Well,
bring
I
some
was just
guys
saying,
over.
like the players that were rumored to talk aren't necessarily the ones that I would think would come over, given that he's the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I don't really see why. I mean, I see that there's a picture circling on the internet of Venables' son, defensive tackle like Brian Burns, not Brian Burns, like Brian Bess something, and then DJ on Lele, all in a car, like with the Snapchat thing of like the Sooners, which I don't understand why DJ would be linked to the defensive coordinator, like Nate said. I feel like that
Well,
just doesn't make sense. Why he would move with him,
I
but
think that's just I think that's just the fact that like he might want out of Clemson. I think with Cade Klubnik coming in out of Westlake, 5-star guy, very talented. I think DJ kind of sees the writing on the wall that like the fan base might have like left him behind.
Hmm.
So he might just be
Yeah.
saying, "Look, here's this guy. He's from Clemson. He knows me, probably knows me somewhat well, me being the face of the team and all. I can go over there. I'll have his respect to begin with. There's a chance Caleb Williams isn't there, which we can talk about later. Now I have a chance of being the starter at a premier program, or at least probably people thought was a premier program, at Oklahoma in a somewhat respectable conference in which I can have some success in. That's my
Yeah.
thing, at least.
And again, there are a lot of transfer situations that have started today as of Monday, but we're going to discuss these in a later podcast.
Yeah,
I think
let's.
we should move forward and discuss the how we did, I guess, in our picks of the games for this week.
Just to say, Florida fans. I know a few Florida fans, but I don't think, and as you clearly see, we all underestimated you. We all picked Florida State, so that was
Mhm.
quite embarrassing.
Yes. Just to run through a couple not so interesting games really quick. Baylor, got it done. Texas Tech misses the field goal as the game ends, and Baylor advances to the Big 12 championship. Georgia absolutely destroys Georgia Tech. That game was not much of a game. Wake Forest beats Boston College comfortably. UTSA goes down big early against North Texas and can't come back. So their hopes at an undefeated season are done. And they finish 11-1. They'll face who do they face? I forget who they face. It's going to be Western Kentucky, the number one passing offense in the nation, in their USA championship game. Oregon beats Oregon State. And then now we can talk about some of the more interesting games of the weekend.
Promise Nate I wouldn't rant about the refs, so let's actually focus on the games here. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. Close one down at the wire. Oklahoma's offense pulls a magician's trick and decides to disappear in the second half. Kind of bites them in the ass when they need a win.
It kind of sounds like Oklahoma, to be honest, though. Just
Mm-hmm.
disappeared.
Credit to Oklahoma State. They stayed in this game well. Defense struggled a little bit in the first half, but showed up big in the second half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they cut.
And like the thing about Oklahoma, it's like when they weren't like shooting themselves with fouls, they were moving the ball fairly easily.
Yes, I think Caleb Williams had a great game. He left it all out in the field. I mean, you can see it even in the last drive. He has a 60-yard scramble. He's putting every single last bit of his energy in trying to win that game. So he played well. But overall, as a team, Oklahoma could not
Insane
be
run.
too much.
Also like some of the play calling near the end of the game, in the red zone by Lincoln Riley, it did not make sense to me. Like the first play, try to go for the end zone, yeah, it makes sense. But even after like say second down, you realize like the end zone isn't working regardless of what the refs are doing. Why don't you go for a shorter play? Try to get the first down at least. They weren't focusing that much on that area. Move the chains. You give
Well,
a,
moving.
you give more versatility for your offense in a short area of the field to maybe run it, pass it, or give a higher chance of your quarterback being able to run it in. Like I don't understand the play calling at the end of the game.
Honestly, this is probably that last like 5 minutes of offensive play calling from Lincoln Riley was probably the worst coaching I've seen from him in like a
That
very
was his,
long
that was
time.
his, that was his letter of resignation right there.
That was he literally just quit.
And it's interesting. It's almost as if like it was a tale of two halves, and it was funny because there were two muff punts in this game, and so Oklahoma State muffed a punt, and that resulted in Oklahoma gaining a lot of momentum. And then right near the end, as Oklahoma had just gotten a good stop against Oklahoma State, they muffed the punt
Fumbled the return.
right next to the goal, next to the goal line, and
That
Oklahoma State
slowed
ends up scoring.
momentum. Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, the shit show. Just
I believe they got Texas fan um
maybe we got
like
a Texas fan
supporting
rooting for
Oklahoma in a weird
Oklahoma.
way. Not even rooting for, just expecting them to win.
Yep.
I mean,
So Oklahoma's playoff hopes are over. They'll
Their
be looking
hopes are
forward to the bowl
over.
game with Bob Stoops.
Oklahoma State kind of pulled a Damian Lillard on Oklahoma.
And they clutched up for
I made a
Baylor.
joke with Avi earlier on where it's like I was basically saying how Oklahoma had been kicking Oklahoma State's ass for 7 straight years. Then Mike Gundy just decides to end their program as we know it.
hmm And again, no, another thing is Oklahoma State almost clutches up for Baylor. You know, they send them to the Big 12 championship by beating Oklahoma. So good for both programs. It'll be a good Big 12 championship game this upcoming weekend. Next up, we have, in my opinion, the game of the week, the Iron Bowl.
Um,
The
I was
barrage of
so close
2 point
to having the
conversions.
pick of the week.
Oh, it was painful. It hurt.
This was
Hey Nate,
honestly just like
Nate, I know I can't rant about the refs. Can I rant about the new overtime rules?
What do you have to say? Because I honestly, I'm for them because I agree that I think it's risky to continually do 25-yard drives. I think that it doesn't help anyone, and all it does is increase the chances of players getting hurt. What do you think?
I get the whole against 25-yard drives, but at least make it like 10 yards. I don't like the idea of alternating two. I don't like the idea of one play alternating. It's like,
Well,
literally a 2 point
obviously, this,
conversion.
this change was made in result to the infamous LSU A&M game, in which lasted 7 overtimes.
but
Um,
it very
I think
rarely
that
goes to that end.
the game
I feel
lasted
like
5 hours, and if you think about it, that's just not good for the players. They're getting exhausted, and exhausted players continually putting that much effort in, people
but
are
like
going to get
I'm
hurt.
fine with like the idea, but like I feel like doing it after the third overtime is kind of too soon.
All I have to say is it's significantly better than what the NFL does, and that's
Yeah,
fine
Yeah,
by me.
yeah,
that's not an accomplishment. Like
yeah. That's like
I
that's
could have I could have the mascots race across the field. That's better than what the NFL has.
That's
okay,
true.
being better than the NFL is like being better than like a first grader at high school math. Like it doesn't mean anything. The NFL is itself is kind of a shit show in general.
Mhm. But focusing on the game a little bit more, I mean, Auburn's defense played absolutely lights out. They used the crowd to their full advantage. I mean, Bryce Young did again, yet again, in an away game, did not look like a Heisman winner.
Yeah. This game, like I know a lot of Alabama fans are excited, like oh we won, but like you should be highly concerned. You barely, granted it was on the run at O'Hare. You barely beat a 6-6, beating up Auburn team with a second string quarterback who can barely walk.
hmm
No
It
disrespect.
was, it was,
Took
it
you to
was not.
took you to 4 overtimes.
It was an ugly offensive performance from Auburn. TJ Finley. I mean, he tried his best, but he threw one interception, and there were two more throws. There was another interception that got saved by a roughing the passer call, and another one that was barely dropped. So I mean, just overall, their offense was not there. Auburn's defense played extremely well for majority of the game. They held Alabama to 10 points in the regular game, which is and no points until the 8 minutes and 44 seconds into the fourth quarter. So
Probably
it was
both
just a
teams
great
scored more.
performance. I think Auburn with Bo Nix wins this game, but since they didn't have Bo Nix,
Probably,
that's obviously why I picked
probably like two
Alabama.
touchdowns at least.
hmm So yeah, it's for all of us fans who are probably sick of Alabama winning, it's kind of heartbreaking to watch. A little, not heartbreaking, just a little crushing to watch.
I'm
And
just mad that I feel like some things that I was told not to mention in this podcast dictated game. But let's move on to
A crushing
another big
victory.
game.
yep, and this was I would call this one a snowball because if anyone watched this game, it was snowing in droves. It was just madness. The field was
Sideways.
completely white except for where they had scraped snow off to see the lines. It was brutal, and yet wide receivers were making catches the entire game. It was impressive. There were like three different one-handed catches I saw. It was crazy. Overall, Michigan State dominates, wins the game. Penn State tries a late comeback, but fails. You guys have any
Um,
other impressions from this game?
um, maybe not exactly from this game, but in general from this week. Weather's the one argument the Big Ten has to why it could possibly be a better conference than the SEC. Because, like, I know a lot of Big Ten fans will make the argument that, like, sure, the SEC has all these 5-star dudes, but they're playing in 80-degree weather in November, or we're freezing our butts off up here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, running the ball down each other's throats. And that's an argument to make, like, for the Big Ten, like Alabama would melt in that weather.
That would definitely be interesting to see. kind of like this is a kind of far out comparison, but like in soccer when they have the World Cup and they host it in a tropical country, like for example in 2014 it was in Brazil. You saw many international players from countries like England and Norway and Canada struggle to complete full matches just because of the difference in temperature. So environment is definitely something that's specific, especially in a conference like the Big Ten where it is so regionally united. It is not spread out like many of the conferences now. It's so like it's compact and located all together in the Northeast. So that definitely be interesting to see maybe like
Well,
exhibition matches
like more
for
than
other
like yeah,
teams to play.
yeah, and like connecting back to your FIFA agreement. Like, then again, you look at Russia 2018. Like the European countries performed a lot better.
Hmm. That is true. Next up we have Notre Dame Stanford, which wasn't much of a game. Notre Dame won comfortably, just dominated all around, making
Listen to
strengthening
the
their case to make the college football playoff.
no, sadly, but yeah.
Beating a very
Well,
impressive 3-9 Stanford team.
well,
No,
yeah, I know,
no,
but
I
then the
kid.
only
Uh,
Notre Dame goes 11-1 and loses the coach, like as a Power Five or as like a major program.
it obviously says something about what, um,
LSU offers.
yeah.
Okay, let's move on to
The
the game of
big
the
house.
week. That what I think is the game of the week, which me and Nate picked the dog in this fight and won. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh specifically finally ends their losing streak against the Buckeyes in Ann Arbor. Not as snowy as Michigan State, Penn State, but the snow was damn near going sideways. Hassan Haskins decides that he ain't letting Michigan lose the 11th time in a row. 5 touchdowns on the ground, 170 yards on the ground. Damn.
Has himself a day. I agree. Was he had a massive impact on this game. Michigan's defense also played well. I will say that I was watching this game early and I got scared because I was like, Michigan scored early and got the ball
And
back
then
to
the pick.
OSU and had a chance to score again, and then they threw a pick, and I got scared because I thought the momentum would shift. But credit to Michigan, they hung in all the way, pulled away in the fourth quarter, and got the win.
And this is where I'll give Jim Harbaugh some credit. 'Cause I think what was happening with the interception is they were straying away from their identity as a run first team. Because like before this game, everyone's like, "Oh, Michigan has to pass the ball to win this game." And then I think something good that Jim Harbaugh did was say, "No, we're the number 5 team in the country. We will run the damn offense we want to." And they decided we're just going to give it to Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum and Donovan and run it down their throats. That's exactly what they ended up doing. And I think this. And there's one quote Jim Harbaugh had after the game, which kind of signifies like why this is a great rivalry. He, like, there's wasn't directed towards Ryan Day, but like it's kind of implied. He talked about how some people are born on third base and think they hit a triple. It's like, damn. Like, I think now that he's on the winning side, Jim Harbaugh's finally having some fun in this rivalry.
Yeah, shout out to Hassan Haskins though. He looked like what Kenneth Walker should have looked like against Ohio State, just dominating on the ground. I'm
I
Oh
gonna
think
be
that's a
yeah,
honest
great
though.
comparison, Albie. I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah. Honestly though, I picked Ohio State. If I had known it was snowing, I don't think there's a chance I pick Ohio State. Just Michigan in the big house with snow. It's just unbeatable. That's on me. But yeah, a quite dominant win as they probably will be locked to make the college football playoff, which is
unless they choked to Iowa.
unless they choke to Iowa, which would probably be like the biggest upset of
The
the year.
most Michigan thing of all time.
Yeah, that would be the most Michigan thing of all time. Can't have shit in Detroit.
Yeah.
I know it's not in Detroit, but still, it's just
Oh my,
painful.
saddest shit
Um,
on Detroit. Now had to
yeah. Moving on. Oh, that was the reactions. Um, we decided to cover rankings based off of these games. It's been oh shoot.
Okay,
Records.
then records for the past. Me and Aubrey tied at 6-5. Nate kicked our asses with a 9-2 finish. Just wait till the NFL ones come out.
Oh, the NFL ones were horrible. I'll tell you that. That was abysmal. But our top tens after this week, I'm gonna start with mine and why I justify my rankings. So, number one, I have Georgia. I don't think it's. I think it's not hard to justify Georgia. They've been dominant this entire season. They're gonna stay at number one. I think they'll beat Bama, but like this, we're stowing off topic. Michigan with a dominant win over Ohio State. I think they take that two spot just because that's where Ohio State was, and it's a win worthy enough of launching them up to the two spot. Cincy at three. I think Cincinnati's been consistent throughout the year. They're currently undefeated and just having a pretty good season. I think they just make that spot. I don't think the committee drops Bama yet out of the college football playoff, but they're still going to keep them in just because they are Alabama, the most notable name in college football, to be honest. So I think they stay at four. Oklahoma State, I think they should be ahead of Bama, as looks like my peers do agree with me, but I don't think the committee puts them there yet. So I'm putting Oklahoma at five. I think Baylor with the Oklahoma game, with the OK State game gets moved up. Ohio State drops down massively because of that loss. Ole Miss with a good win in the Egg Bowl stays where they are, and Michigan State and Notre Dame stay down there because they really haven't played that many good guys. I'll pass it to Jordan, who can
Yeah,
explain
okay,
his.
over to my rankings. This is based on like my personal opinion. Mostly the same as hobbies. Top three all the same. I had Bama and Oak State switched for the simple reason Bama barely beat a 6-6 team with four overtimes. Oklahoma State within one regulation beat a top 10 team and effectively dominated the second half. Um, Only other thing I switched was Ole Miss Ohio State. Ole Miss, a lot of his losses you could chalk up to injuries. The Auburn game, I believe, was coming right after the Tennessee game, which Matt Corral was just like physically exhausted. Bama won. The Ole Miss. Ole Miss had so many injuries that game, and they played fairly well given the injuries. Ohio State inexcusably lost to Oregon, and I don't want to say inexcusably lost, but inexcusably played poorly against Michigan. And then Notre Dame, you couldn't really find anyone else, in my opinion, to put number 10. I don't really think Oregon is deserving of it, but Nate will try to convince otherwise.
So yep, here's my top 10. And again, I did my top 10 based off what I think the best 10 teams are. I didn't do it based off what I think the college football playoff committee will select, because I do agree with many of the points that Abby brought up, such as Bama staying in the top four. And other than that, Georgia, obviously, no doubt in anyone's mind, they're the number one team. Michigan earns the number two spot after a good win against a great team. And if you look back at the record, their only loss is just a close loss against Michigan State. So they've been good all year. I think Alabama, they're the third spot. You know, they've had some close games, but again, they've been consistent. They go 11-1 while playing through a full SEC West schedule, and with one loss at A&M, which had a record-setting attendance. Oklahoma State, you know, they deserve to be top four in my opinion. They have a great win against Oklahoma. If you look back on their record, they've had several top 25 wins. And then you have Cincinnati, who in my opinion, I think most of their high rankings has been based off of previous years rather than like how they performed this year. And for that reason, and they've had a good season, don't get me wrong, but I don't see them as a better team than Oklahoma State or Bama, even though their record may be better. So I have them at 5. Baylor has 6, and this will obviously Baylor's ranking next week will obviously depend on how they do in the Big 12 championship game. But they made it, and they're in contention for a possible but unlikely playoff spot, given how things play out this championship weekend. I agree with Tarun. I think Ole Miss is a better team than Ohio State. Looking back, Ole Miss's only bad loss was Alabama, and speaking from a personal viewpoint, we did lose to Auburn because of injuries. We had our starting 3 wide receivers starting left guard, starting right guard, and starting tight end out. And our quarterback was injured the entire game, had to exit at some point. So I do think that we don't. Our only bad loss is probably Alabama, while Ohio State looked unimpressive against Michigan and had a bad home loss against Oregon early in the season that many people forgot about. Next is Michigan State. They've had a good season. I mean, obviously getting crushed by Ohio State moves them down this list, but they get the job done at home against Penn State, finish all the season well. And then I do think Notre Dame is fraudulent. I don't think they deserve to be top 10. Oregon's had a good season. I think they don't get enough credit for their win over Ohio State early in the season just because it was so long ago, but I think it was a very impressive win. They went to, I think it was a top 3 program at the time and got a huge upset at their away. They had a disappointing loss, but overall they've had a good season. I think they probably deserve this top 10 spot a little bit more if they win the Pac-12 championship. But I still see them as a better team than Notre Dame. Notre Dame's only really good matchup, good win you could argue is Wisconsin. And the biggest game of the year they played was Cincy, and they lost. So I think that's one of the cons of them not being in a conference. But again, I don't see their schedule as being that convincing. So that's my top 10.
I agree with most of y'all's rankings. The only thing I would maybe push back on is Nate having Bama at 3. I get the argument, but again, it's just I disagree with the point that they've been consistent. Like they've been there's some weeks it seemed like a completely different team. Like I feel like something changed after A&M. I don't know if their confidence got rattled or something, but I don't think they're the same dominating team we saw in the beginning of the season. The Cincy point, if you're looking at it from a power ranking standpoint, I agree. But you think you have to take into account most deserving. Technically speaking, they have a good win against the Notre Dame team, which obviously I view as in the top 10, which might influence our rankings because you obviously don't see him that high. But I say for
But
the most
outside
part,
of the Notre Dame win, who do you have? Like, what good wins do you see on their schedule? Because if you pull it up, I mean, they've had several near losses against mediocre teams. The next best team you could probably argue for is, honestly, I don't know. Maybe UCF. They've had a mediocre year. I mean, they played Indiana, which looked more impressive than it is now, given that Indiana had what, a 2-10 season. Very ugly. They beat Tulsa by 1 score. Struggled against USF for a while. I don't know. I think Houston probably gives them a good chance to strengthen their schedule in the conference championship. And if they win convincingly in that game, maybe I'll change my mind. But I still don't think that they're more deserving than Oklahoma State and Alabama just because of the teams that Oklahoma State and Alabama have had to beat. Yeah.
yeah, see that book that probably goes in conflict of like how to view quality win. Because like while strength of schedule is important, I think like your best win has to like play the biggest role. So the way I saw it is like Cincy, I think has one has I'd say the second best win. Bama's win against Ole Miss being the best one, I would say, and then since being undefeated puts them there.
I said there, I think Bama's a victim of their own success because they've done so well in the SEC West that they are the team that other teams would look to beat and get a good reputable win. So they struggle just to find good opponents. But that probably sums it up. I think that's a good estimate. Obviously, we'll see. We can compare these to the AP Top 25, Coaches Top 25, and College Football Playoff Top 25, which comes out tomorrow night. Moving forwards, let's look at Heisman candidates.
Yeah. I want to say something real quick about Heisman. Well, Avi, if you
Yeah,
could,
it's alright. It's just
yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
currently,
I'll be obviously distracted right now.
currently as we're speaking, Pete Carroll is kind of an idiot, and he decided to run like a 10-yard screenplay on a 2-point conversion, and we lost the game. So yeah,
Yeah,
when I mean 10 yard,
the
I mean
game
like
like
we're at the 2 yard line. He makes Russell Wilson throw it back. It's basically like the screen is being received at the 7 to 10 yard line. Like, what type of play call is that? When we lose by 2 points.
Hmm.
But
Seattle in
yeah,
the sense.
hey,
Sounds delightful.
delightful.
Getting back into the
Speaking back of the
getting back to the
delightful
Heisman
Heisman
watch.
though, can
So
we just give it to Bryce Young already? Even
no,
though
I'm gonna
he's not,
disagree.
no,
even
I
though
don't want
disagree.
to.
even
He's
though
the worst
he's
one.
balling out, even though he's balling out, the committee will probably give it to Bryce Young because a he's from
I think
Bama,
they will, but I
and at
don't
the
want them
moment,
to.
I think
He's not that
honest,
good.
he's
He's
not that. I get
inconsistent as
that.
hell.
None of the candidates this year have been that good, but like,
Okay, this
So
is
here's the problem. So I thought if Ohio State won, CJ Stroud would have it on lock. And they lost. Ole Miss would have two losses either way. 'Cause I think the only way Matt Corral was going to win the Heisman was if both Bama and Ohio State lost, because then none of them have a record advantage.
see
Actually, no way.
this is where there's a problem with the award because it shouldn't just be about your team's record. And I know this is me definitely being a homer because obviously I want Matt Corral to win the award. I think he means more to any team in the nation than any other player. But like CJ Stroud, he struggles. He doesn't lead his team in the way they needed to be led against Michigan. Bryce Young, I honestly will be upset if Bryce Young wins the Heisman. I think he is, and I don't know what's the best way to say this. He can only play in a pristine environment. He can't
Bryce
play well.
Young,
I mean, you look at. I mean, I get the best example. I mean, there's several examples. A&M at College Station, he struggles. He throws interceptions. He's missing passes left and right. I mean, you look at their matchup against Florida at the Swamp, a very bad Florida team. Looking at it now, and they barely get any points.
yeah, but
And then again, we see it in the Iron Bowl. He's missing passes. He's having to. I mean, he's sitting in the pocket for 6 seconds and still not finding a read. And I don't see him as being that impressive of a candidate.
I don't
I think
think
yeah,
he's
Bryce
if
Young
he
is
had this type of season at another school that was not Alabama, he would not win Heisman. He wouldn't even be in
Bryce Young's
contention for
like a
Heisman.
four-story house with five basements below. He can be either the top of the world or the bottom of it.
That's an
There's
interesting
no in
metaphor.
between. And it's kind of frustrating. It's probably frustrating a bit if you're a Bama fan. Like, cause I agree with your analysis. But I push back on the whole record thing. Like, I don't think it should matter what your team's record is. We agreed last time that it's basically become a quarterback award, and he's probably being quarterback as a leader, right? So might have might have great stats. Like Will Rogers probably has insane stats, but his team's 7-5.
hmm All I have to say, did you say Will Rogers? I don't know. I think Will Rogers is a case of inflated stats. You have Mike Leach, air raid offense. You're throwing every single play. You're obviously gonna have high passing yards. I think he's probably just a quarterback in a system. And this is kind of like the similar Brady Belichick argument. Obviously, that's different because Brady's been able to maintain it for several years, and Will Rogers only having his second year, first year successful. But I'm not sure if it's so much Will Rogers as it is air raid feeding him passing yards. And
Well,
just
that's
that,
true, but
just that, self promote a little bit. Matt Corral, I'm gonna give some stats because obviously I want Matt Corral to win, and I'm gonna convince anyone who's listening Matt Corral should win. Obviously Heisman ballots go out today, and I'm 100% sure that what I say won't matter to those people. But Matt Corral is the only FBS player with 3,300 plus passing yards and 500 plus rushing yards. He has more total offensive yards than both CJ Stroud and Bryce Young by almost 400 on each of them. He has the 10th. Ole Miss has the 10th toughest strength of schedule compared to Ohio State having the 33rd strength toughest, and Bama having the 50th toughest. He led Ole Miss to their 10th ever first 10th ever first ever 10-win season. And he showed marked improvement this year. If you watch him last year, especially in the LSU and Arkansas games, he's throwing interceptions, he's forcing throws, and you haven't seen any of that Mackerel this year. There's maybe one instance in the Egg Bowl and one instance against Auburn, but overall he's been a far better quarterback. He's more methodical. He's making reads. He cuts down his interception numbers from 14 to 4 in a longer season.
yeah, but in a weird way, his better habits have kind of screwed him over. Because Because like last year he had almost like Will Rogers sort of mentality where it's like my arm will take me where I need to go. Let's say if you look at a Tennessee game, like that dude did not care about stats. Like he was just trying to get the win. But the problem with that when it comes to the Heisman is the Heisman's a stat heavy award.
And the Tennessee game hurt Macron. I mean, he was injured for 3 games after. He had almost 200 yards rushing on the ground, had 30 rushing
And that's
attempts.
after
He
that.
left everything on the field for his team.
I have a
I think,
question. Do you think
yeah.
Desmond Ritter has a chance though, just because of the whole
No.
wins argument? Because really, it's kind of a shit show. I do think Corral probably would like deserve it if I were to say put the deserve word on someone, but there's really no one that like stood out throughout the year that had like such an amazing season outside of like I guess maybe C.J. Stroud or like Kenneth Walker, but like can you really give it to them with the
You're forgetting
records?
about Jordan Davis.
And Jordan, see, but like I would love to give it to Jordan Davis, but is the committee gonna give a defensive player the Heisman,
We're not going
especially
to, but that
Jordan
doesn't mean he's not the
Davis?
most deserving.
It's not going to
And
happen.
everyone's gonna
That's
say
not
It's
like
not
Jordan
gonna
Davis.
happen.
everyone's gonna say like, oh, he only has 10 tackles and 2 sacks. I'm like, yeah, but he's an interior defensive
Yes.
lineman. You do realize they get like no stats, right? The whole point of that
Like
position is to help other like the linebackers get
not
It's
their
every
basically just
numbers.
swallow up guards so that your tackles can rush
not
one on
not
one.
not every interior defensive lineman can be the Dominican Sue, and even then, he didn't even win. So
hmm I think if going off your argument, I mean, Desmond Ritter, he has had good season. He's at exactly 3,000 passing yards on the season. I would say if we're going off the wins don't matter argument, I would say my quarterback of choice would be Kenny Pickett. If it wasn't Matt Corral, obviously.
that is someone actually I would
Kenny
argue
Pickett, he
for.
has 4,000 plus passing yards and 40 touchdowns. I mean, that is insane. Those are astronomical numbers.
I think Kenny Pickett
He's
probably.
fifth in the nation in passing yards, and that's excluding and the teams above him are obviously air raid offenses. Like you have Will Rogers above him, and then Bailey Zapp at Western Kentucky, which is basically air raid, but somehow better than Mike Leach.
I mean, to be fair, Bryce Young does have insane stats. It's just
hmm
he's not really
But
deserving.
here's a stat: Bryce Young and Kenny Pickett have the same amount of passing touchdowns this year.
That is true. I'm
That's
literally
interesting.
checking up right now. Even though
And both will
Pickett
have 2 losses as quarterbacks.
Kenny
hmm
Pickett has 3 more interceptions, but at the same time, he's not throwing to John Messi Jr. and the stacked Alabama team. But he still has, he's is arguably as efficient as a quarterback, and like he has less playmakers on his team. So like statistically, you could argue Kenny Pickett if you want to do like Matt Corral just being so much better this year as an option. But then sadly, the wins and the inflated stats, I think it's going to go to Bryce Young. I don't really
hmm
think he deserves it, but maybe he grows as a
Yeah,
player, and we can look back and say
Yeah,
we'll
he
see.
started off really good.
Hopefully, and this is me again, Macro.
that's a
Saying
question.
hopefully he gets exposed against Georgia.
Yeah.
I would,
Hoo.
I would be happy.
Does
Try to
does
find
the
a tone down
Heisman
what it
does
says.
the Heisman
I
get
would be
affected by that? Do votes get
what?
affected by that?
Yeah, I think Georgia's about
What
to
ballots are due next Monday, so
pull
they
a
would be
Clemson
affected. This will be
on
the
Nick
last week
Saban.
that's
Okay,
affected.
so if ballots are affected by that, then maybe there's a shot for like Kenny Pickett, just because
If you
Because
were
if
to
think
pick
about
Bryce
it.
top
Young
three right now,
If
who would you say?
Pittsburgh is 2 loss, if Ole Miss is 2 loss, Ohio State's 2 loss, and Bama's 2 loss,
give to Pickett,
the wins thing's kind of out the window.
hmm It's
Pickett.
then it's just like a program pedigree type thing.
Then that kind of screws you over even
Okay,
more.
well, here's something interesting we'll do. We haven't have a graphic or anything for this or anything, but obviously 3 Heisman candidates go to New York to be, and then the winner is announced. If you were to pick 3 Heisman candidates right now, they go to New York. Who would you pick? I'll be go first.
Damn, you put me on the spot. So
I can
obviously
go first if you want. I know where I want to go.
we have to send Bryce Young to New York. I think that's just like the front runner. I would love to send guys like Aiden Hutchinson or Jordan Davis or even Kenneth Walker, but I don't think they would go. Like they would be sent, they'd be invited. Um, Joining Bryce Young, I would say Matt Corral would also go to New York, and lastly, like with that third spot, I think the committee and like the voters would bring in that big name bias again and
This isn't
pick
about the committee, Albie. This is who you want
who I
and
want,
who you want. Who you
Okay,
want. Three players you want.
if it's who I want, I think that Jordan Davis should definitely get an invite. He should go. He's arguably been the best defensive player in all of college football and probably one of the biggest key factors of Georgia's dominant defense.
Hmm.
Alongside Jordan Davis, I would send Matt Corral. I think he's been very good this year, even though the numbers are not super impressive. Watching him, he has impressed a lot of NFL talent and scouts. He's projected to go super high, not even with his numbers, just because of his play as a quarterback and what he can do. And I feel like his ability and what he's done for this Opens team, especially where they're ranked now, he should definitely get an invite. And then alongside him, I know it's gonna piss a lot of people off, but like I think I still have to. I think no, I'm not gonna send Bryce. I'll send Kenny Pickett. I just think that talent disparity, but the same numbers, and arguably like the similar level of competition, Kenny Pickett still wins out.
Yeah, okay. My top three, um, Jordan Davis, um, Matt Corral. Let me check Kenneth Walker's stats real quick because he has good stats. So
Kenneth Walker
Kenneth Walker.
currently Kenneth Walker currently has um 1,636 yards for 18
oh, yeah, Kenneth
touchdowns.
Walker for sure. Like, holy shit, that's a great season.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say that
Kenneth
Kenneth Walker
Walker,
has
Matt
that.
Corral, Jordan Davis, right
Those
there.
are your three through? Lock them in now?
Yeah,
Okay.
lock him in.
My turn. I would I agree. I'd say Kenneth Walker has a good season, but I would not send him to the Heisman. He did not show up in the games where it mattered most, which was Ohio State. I mean, him getting shut out that hard was just not good. He had literally no stats. He had like 8 rushing attempts for 22 yards. Like it was brutal. I would send, and I'm gonna change this up. You know, everyone's been going with Jordan Davis for defensive. I would pick Will Anderson from Alabama. He's the sack leader in the
Oh
nation, 14 and a
yeah,
half yards,
Will
and the
Anderson.
sacks, and he has 49 tackles, 49 solo tackles, 36 assist tackles, 85 tackles overall. He has been dominant for Alabama. I mean, you talk about Jordan Davis's effect on the Georgia defense. But Georgia defense is still talented. They have 5-star Nakobe Dean at linebacker. Alabama's defense is not the same Alabama defense as old this year. They have talent missing all over across the board. They're not the same 5-star pedigree that they've been. And yet Will Anderson has been carrying them. He has been producing consistently. My second pick,
Okay.
and this is not an order of anything. This is just like the order that I thought of. I think and this is not my rankings, quote unquote. These are
Yep,
just the
yep.
three people I would send. I would send Matt Corral. I mean, I don't need to say anything else. I'm an Ole Miss fan. You know, I'm a big Matt Corral. He,
You got
I mean,
that
Ole Miss would
homer.
not be 10-2 right now without Matt Corral. We'd be like 7-5, 6-6 without Matt Corral. He's just been huge for us this year. And then
He'd be
third,
Texas
I'm gonna agree with
plus.
Abby. I would go with Kenny Pickett. I mean, he's had a great year statistically. He's underrated just because of where he's at. I think he's had a good year, and
No,
like we
Again,
say, it's a quarterback award, so I'd pick him over Kenneth Walker.
again,
So those are my three.
without him is Pitt bowl eligible?
No, I don't think they're ranked, and I don't know if
Not
they're
even
bowl
ranked. Are they
eligible.
bowl eligible? Do they have 6 dubs?
I don't know enough about their full team to say how they. I know they wouldn't be in the national spotlight without him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
now,
my three would be
Okay.
Will Anderson, Matt Corral, and Kenny Pickett.
now, given that we've said who we think should go, who do you think will most likely go? Keep
I'll
it
go
with
first. I'll
yeah.
go first. This one right here. Bryson first. CJ Stroud second, and this is just being hopeful. Matt Corral third.
Ditto that. Exactly.
I'm gonna go C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Kenneth Walker. Even though it is a quarterback award, I
I can
feel
see
like
that. That's fair.
those numbers are impressive, of course. And I think when it compares like how well those numbers are for a running back compared to Matt Corral's numbers as a quarterback, of course numbers don't tell the whole story. more like any of the story with Matt Corral. But
He's also averaging 6.2 a carry. Like,
yeah,
god damn.
Yeah.
he's had a very great season for a running back, and I think that would overlook Matt Corral's like rocket leap of a quarterback growth that he's experienced. And
And it's interesting,
yeah,
but because it's almost as if
Also,
after almost lost to Alabama, Matt Corral's Heisman campaign was seemingly over. Like the narrative that was painted was just Bryce Young dominated Matt Corral. Whereas if you look at that game, it was just Alabama overall being a better team, being more talented, and just executing better than Ole Miss. Matt Corral had a fine game statistically. He had
yeah,
200 passing yards, touchdown, rushing touchdown. He was fine. But after that, the spotlight shifted away per se, and I think his odds have
yeah,
been diminishing since then.
yeah. Moving on from the Heisman, I think that should be about it. If y'all want, we can also talk about, like, say, freshmen we thought we were, like, impressive this year.
Oh, I am not
yeah,
nationally aware enough to
there
say
were a
it.
lot of freshmen this year that were very impressive.
I mean, CJ Stroud
Yeah.
is
I mean,
technically a
C.J.
freshman.
Stroud technically is a freshman. Bryson,
Caleb Williams. Don't forget my
Caleb,
man Xavier Worthy.
Xavier
Xavier
Worthy was.
Worthy.
No, I'm not getting into that. That's too big of an argument, and I don't know enough. I'll leave that up
Yeah,
to
okay. Let's
AP to
yeah,
pick their
let's
freshman
call it a
All-American
day.
team.
Um yeah. Let's call it a day then. Thanks for watching another episode of the Triple Option Podcast. I'm your co-host Trun Doglu, along with Nate Autry and Avi Dingery. College football season coming to an end, but we will not be going away anytime soon. We will still be covering the college football offseason as well as the NFL. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Signing off. See you next time.